Little while. Can I have your attention, please? I'm actually glad that at least people are having a good time. Maybe we'll just cancel the talk. Okay. Well, welcome to the Thai event today. I see a lot of new faces today, so I'd like to just, with a show of hands, can you please tell me how many people here are for the first time? All right. Okay. How many people here are Thai members? Okay. And for others who are not, we would encourage you to become members. And for people who are here first time, Thai is all about fostering entrepreneurship. That's what we do. We do that by a combination of various programs and activities, all the way from, so we help the entrepreneurs from this, all the way from the idea stage to starting a company, to funding the company, to making progress on the company. And we have various events and programs that we do every year. One of the events that you're here for is the Mystory Event, which happens once a month, where we talk about the story of one of the entrepreneurs that just had an exit, and there is a lot of learning from those stories. And as we can see from this event, many of you come here to listen to those and get inspired. Then we have for people who are contemplating on an idea for a company and just don't know whether their idea is really right or not. We have an event we call Pitch Fest, where you come in and present your ideas to a panel of 6 judges, and they will give you an instant feedback on what do they think about your idea. And then if you are ready with your idea and you want to raise money, we do have Thai Angels as a forum where you can apply if you are a startup looking for funding. And you can do online application, and depending on whether your plan gets picked up, you will get a chance to present in front of various Thai angels who are about 50 or so investors who have made investments in 14 companies so far. So you have an opportunity to get funding there. And then if you think you're ready for VC funding and you want to learn more about the VC funding, and we have an event called VC One-on-One, where rather than going in front of a VC cold, you can actually, in a very friendly setting, present your plan, get a feedback, and therefore modify your pitch before you actually go in front of the VCs. So that's about funding. And then if you happen to be in any of the verticals that we serve, i.e. social, mobile, cloud, energy, and health sciences, we do various sessions on those, and if you've noticed many of the sessions there that we do on an ongoing basis. So Thai is comprised of basically 3 main focus, one being the charter members, which are individuals who have really done well and are willing to give back to the community. So there are only 300, actually 265 charter members just in Silicon Valley. And then in addition to that, we have all of you who are Thai members, and then members only pay a due of $100 a year, and you get to attend all of these events for a heavily discounted or sometimes free price, or sometimes you only come to the member-only events. And then in addition to that, many of people come here to our events. We have somewhere around 65 events a year. And then we have our flagship conference called ThaiCon, where we get somewhere around 3,000 people every year. It has been nominated as one of the top 10 conferences in the world by Worth Magazine. And that's another event. And so we get somewhere around 10 to 15,000 people who are not members who also come to our events every year. And then all these things are made possible by the generous support of our sponsors. Many of the names you saw there. Is anybody here from any of our sponsors here? Well, thank you for being sponsors. And today we have, we are fortunate to have Thai Global President here, Mr. Ashok Rao. So welcome. And then we also have a guest from UK here. There is, and can you say one word about what you do?
We're a European-based IP attorney firm.
Okay, so they're a UK-based IP attorney firm, so if anybody is interested in talking about the patents as it relates to international, maybe you can talk with them as well. So with this, I'm going to hand it off to Naveen, who is still eating, but time is up. So Naveen is our program chair, and he has been responsible for a lot of the new programs. And I'm going to invite him to take the program forward. Thanks, Naveen.
Thank you, Paul. Let's give him a big round of applause. I was going to say, usually we used to have wine here, but Raj is, where is Raj? Here. I know, see, he's got his glass. As soon as I came there, I said, where is my glass of wine? Otherwise, I would have told you, everyone seems so quiet, that go get a glass of wine from there and you'll be fine. So anyway, first, TIE is heavily led by volunteer organization, and there are few staff members, including Raj, Raj Desai here, who is our executive director, and you saw Patricia in the front, who helps us, and just like another, I think, 3 more staff members. So let's give them a big round of applause. And I think I have less energy today because of no wine. So Raj, we need to get our wine bottles back. All right. So without taking too much of time, how many of you have PhD? How many of you have done PhD in the audience? Wow. So how many of you have created a company out of your PhD research? You know, this gentleman is a charter member and he's an IBM fellow. Thanks for all our charter members also. So how do you take your university research and turn it into a highly successful company? Not only highly successful, but also get your technology deployed in over 130 network operators in over 60 countries. How many of you have dealt with service providers, like, you know, only 2 left in US, started with 1, went into 10 or 12, then back to 2, probably be 1 at some point. And that's why you get such wonderful service that it just calls keeps dropping. I mean, because I also have the scar of like raising tons of money for optical switching company and for 7 years running after these operators. So it's really a daunting task. And so here, this is what Constantine and his team did. Not only they took their research done at UIUC, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and turned it into a very successful company. They founded a company called Bytemobile, and using their research, this was the core foundation of that company, and then had the technology deployed into these 130 network operators. I think it was really huge kudos to you. So with that, and not only that, then Bytemobile was acquired by Citrix last year, and currently Constantine is CTO, Chief Technology Officer there of the service provider platform at Bytemobile. And prior to that, he was a professor at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign after receiving his PhD since 1986, and also Director of Supercomputing Research and Development. I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to ask him all those questions about all this heavy-duty stuff. So, and his research was in something called, I was trying to memorize the words again, I will say. And that's why I had my paper today. All right, as a multi-threading computer architecture and network wireless performance optimization. The second part is a little easier. So there's a lot of research, and he has 10 patents and over 140 published papers, again, in this multi-threading computer architecture, cloud computing, mobile and wireless technology. So without taking too much of thunder, I would like to invite him here, but before that, I wanted to see if Katrina, his daughter, is also here, if you would like to give us some little spicy things about him. You can come over here and you can say something about him if you'd like to.
Sure.
Just come on over.
He was a good
Well, I don't have much to say because I was very young when my father began the company. All I know is from personal experience, it took a lot of hard work, sleepless nights, and above all, he managed to be a wonderful father. So.
Thank you, Katrina. So let's invite. So I'd like to invite Constantine, Polychronopoulos, to share his exciting, colorful, and exciting journey. Yeah, I pronounced it right.
Actually, use this one.
Thank you, Naveen, for the generous introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I didn't know about Thai. I had heard about Thai, but I didn't know much about Thai until Naveen sent me his kind invitation. And it's a pleasure to be here to see some old friends, some people that we crossed paths in the past, and I certainly plan to be fully involved going forward. I want to thank my daughter. My daughter, I must have done something right. She graduated, I'm a proud father. She graduated from the law school at the University of Illinois. She started her career as a securities, an IP attorney up in San Francisco. Just a couple of weeks ago, and she also got married a couple of weeks ago, so she's here with her husband. Now, unlike Naveen, he dealt with service providers, with operators, and he still maintains nice color in his hair. I started looking like him 12 years ago, and I ended up with white hair thanks to trying to sell to operators. And those of you who have done that, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I have a few slides here to give you an idea about what Bytemobile is all about. And I'm afraid that some of these slides tend to be more technical, so I'll go quickly through that and stay on what is really more important. How we started, what was the motivation behind forming Bytemobile, and our aspirations, etc., and the lessons I learned personally, some personal perspectives. And this is the agenda. I had, squeezing 13 years of our history in 15 minutes or less, and we'll see whether I'm good at that. So keep me honest here, Naveen, with respect to time. I'll talk a little bit about the Citrix acquisition, which concluded, actually, it happened July 9th of this year, just 3 months ago, and share with you some lessons, some hard lessons that I learned. Most of them are obvious. In hindsight, they are pretty obvious. And, well, the rhetorical question, would I do it again? Absolutely, I would do it again. I can tell you that from the get-go. And I'll be happy. Oh, okay. No, don't worry.
I didn't want you to.
I never fell off the, Thank you. You guys don't have insurance? So, chapter 1, Bytemobile 2000. This is a nutshell of our history. We started at the University of Illinois. Some of you may not know the University of Illinois. I'm proud to be part of the U of I as a student. That's where I did my PhD. How many here are U of I alumni? Great. Yay! Good to see you. There is another good friend here I haven't seen in years, and he has white hair as well. Last time, or gray, we call it pepper and salt. I started my career in 1986. I was a hardcore academic, but I was fortunate early on in my career to work very closely with people in industry, IBM. I was really very fortunate to work very closely with some of the giants in industry like John Cook, you know, the father of MIPS, of RISC. Before he died, Monty Deneau at IBM, some of you may know, these names may ring a bell. And I was learning quite a bit. So I was comparing notes, you know, how we do things in academia, how things happen in industry. And, you know, I love publishing and generating new ideas and doing, you know, the prototypes and etc. But I was always intrigued by the ability to take an idea from concept to product that other people would use. So throughout my career, I continued getting involved with industry, and in 1997, I took sabbatical with one of my students, who was actually my PhD student, who ended up doing most of the core work that ended up becoming, you know, the business model for Bytemobile, David Craig. And we went to Silicon Graphics. We spent a couple of months, actually 6 months. He spent 7, 8 months there. I spent a couple of months. And we implemented something that we came up with in my group called nanothreads. That was the first, as far as I know, the first multi-threading architecture, implementing the operating system that will allow context switching in one clock cycle between threads. That was, you know, compared to the best we could get, which was hundreds of thousands of clock cycles. So we implement that in the IRIX operating system, 4.5 if I remember well, and I got really excited about that. Now, let me give you some more background here. I'm rewinding back to 1986. There was a guy there, a colleague called Mike Farnwell. Does anybody know Mike Farnwell? Mike was a professor at the University of Illinois. David Cook had brought him on board as part of our project to build the fastest supercomputer on the planet, which we managed to do with spending a lot more money and being a couple of years late. Mike was a great guy, and he was involved in startups before. He left in 1988 to start a company called Rambus. And he invited 2 of us to join him. And I laughed and I said, forget it, I'll never do that. Well, probably you all know what Rambus ended up becoming, right? A great company, and Mike Farnwell started his own Skyman Ventures. So he and I were talking, and when I told him about how we really came across some issues with networking, with TCP in particular, and I was talking to Mike, and he said, well, yeah, you know, if you guys have managed to improve TCP performance by a factor of 3 or 4 through the networking, what you're doing in networking stack, that may be a very viable business model. So that's how we started. He was the guy who forced me into making the jump, basically. Even though I always wanted and I was intrigued by making the move to the industry, I didn't have, you know, I was not ready until I had something that I could really sink my teeth in. At the time, I was working with a colleague of mine, Vaduvur Bhargavan, and he was a hardcore networking guy. He and I decided to team up, come out here. Mike Farnwell promised us the first 5 million, which was great, without a business plan, without anything. So it was a good motivation for us to give it a try. And we're very lucky to meet the .edu founders, Asa and the late Rajiv, and they believed in our vision. They put the first investment in. Mike came right back with his own investment, and he was the one who opened the door at Benchmark Capital. Otherwise, we would have never been able to prop the door at Benchmark open. So the rest is more or less history. Series A, we shook, we had the handshake in August 12 of 2000. We closed Series A in October, it took formally, and we raised 50 million with a business plan that was basically a prototype and a PowerPoint presentation, a sketch of a business plan, really. And I'll come back and talk about that a little bit, my experience and my belief as far as business plans go. We kept the heads down and we started working very hard. We went through rough waters, and we remained focused on getting the product out. And eventually, we managed to complete the first GA in less than 8 months from the day we started the company, actually. By that time, we had Nextel sign up from the pilot project. They want to move to commercial negotiations, and we closed the deal with Nextel. That was the first customer that came in. Vodafone UK came second. We're very lucky because we had some great salespeople from Ian Sudman from the UK who stayed with us throughout. He's still with us, with Citrix now. And he was the guy who made Vodafone happen. Now, at the time, if you recall, 2001, early 2001, things were not all that great. So for a startup of about 60 people, getting in Vodafone, Nextel, and Sprint as customers was a great validation of what we're doing. And we started basically a business in an area that was non-existent. The idea was that by improving the TCP protocol, the transport protocol, we would make networks more efficient and therefore improve user experience. That was the base, I oversimplify, but that was the basic idea. None of us had any clue about selling to operators. None of us had any prior knowledge of what it takes to make a commercial product. But we use that, knowing what you don't know and being frank with it helps you focus where you should focus, bringing in the IQ points that would allow you to complete the team. And that's what we did early on. Benchmark was instrumental in helping us, and finally we had what it takes to start knocking at doors and trying to make progress. I'll stay through some of the milestones in our history. My co-founder, Bhargavan, got frustrated. He left very early after the first year. I was trying to convince him to stick around, but he was restless. He went on, started another company, did pretty well. So I was left behind doing a lot of soul searching, and at the same time trying to keep things moving, having to work with people that I never met before, and people who came from a totally different environment, right? I knew about industry in theory, and I was learning fast. We became a real company by the middle of 2001. We had product in real networks, and we had to support those products. So we learned what it means to put a team together to do professional services and customer support, 24/7 customer support. That was a hard lesson. In 2001, we completed the second round, which was the only major round after the first, and we raised $30 million. And that was practically the last round of financing that we raised in the company. Because of acquisition of a couple of companies, actually Procon Systems, later on we had to raise an internal round, but that was purely for the acquisition. So all in all, we raised $59 million. But we were profitable. There were periods where we had to really mind our P's and Q's with respect to operating expenses. But by and large, the company was running on its own cash flow. We started expanding our looking for talent. Talent in the Valley was very expensive. So we did 2 offices. We put in place 2 offices, one in Patras, Greece. That was my hometown. So it was not because it was my hometown, it's also the place, well, part of that. Yeah, had to do with coming from there. And it's really my late brother who came up with the idea. I was collaborating with the University of Patras, one of the premier technical universities in Greece. And I knew that we would be the only show in town who would go there. And that's exactly what we did. What the big US-based companies did with India going to all the major IITs initially, right? Now it's tough. Now you have to be a brand name to go to India and establish a presence and get top talent. But that's what we did. It was basically Bytemobile, the only show in Patras, and we ended up building a team of about 70 engineers, people that otherwise would end up going for graduate studies at top universities in the US. That paid off big time. By the way, the cost of hiring in Greece, even today, is very similar to the cost of hiring in India, engineering talent. In some cases, it's even lower. So it was a no-brainer. Then my heart, of course, was beating for Champaign, right? So in 2006, we found a great opportunity. We decided to venture into the area of video optimization before anybody else could spell what video optimization was all about. We didn't really know what video optimization was all about either. But we decided that video was going to be big in the mobile, in the wireless mobile space, and we had to come up with ways of optimizing video delivery. I'll tell you more about that story. We ended up building a series of products, and we filed for in excess of about 60 patents, 65 patents, most of them issued, with an additional 20 or so patents that came through acquisitions. So that's the broad story. Now let me be more specific. Through our 12 years, we ended up having 135 customers, including 12 of the 15 largest mobile network operators around the globe. And again, I will give you a broad idea about the spatial optimization, but when we started, we would pitch the value of optimization to operators, and 90% of the time they would show us the door. Say, forget it, I'm not interested. It sounds good, but no. Thank you, but no. It was very hard to sell in the early 2001, 2002. Once GPRS started becoming a reality as a means of accessing the internet, and operators starting to get phone calls from unsatisfied, very upset customers, they started looking around for solutions to the problem, right? And optimization all of a sudden got on the map. Bytemobile, we had a steadfast plan to stick to our initial guns as far as the value proposition goes. But when it comes to the actual technology of how to do optimization, we had to change really almost 180 degrees the approach to building an optimization platform. Okay, we came in initially thinking that optimizing TCP would be it, and we ended up getting all the way to layer 7, dealing with content, managing and massaging content, as well as layer 3, throttling traffic at the level of IP pipes. Through the years, as we expanded, we established presence. We started in Champaign. We incorporated actually in Champaign. We came to the Silicon Valley in May of 2000, and we became a real company with well-funded company in October of 2000, with headquarters in Silicon Valley. We started the Patras office in 2004. We started the Champaign office, as I said, 2006. The first presence we had in Europe was in the UK, and that's where we anchored our EMEA team, sales and marketing team. Initially, a small team that made miracles for us in Europe. EMEA, Europe primarily, and the Middle East, but primarily Europe remains the largest, the best territory, accounting for close to 60% of our revenue. We expand in China. We have now an engineering team based in Beijing, China, and we have sales offices in several places around the world. So what was the value proposition? Well, the value proposition stayed the same through the various generations of networks as we went through from GPRS to 2.5G to UMTS, HSPA, today LTE, right? And every time a new network technology would come out, we would have to answer the same question to our customers, existing customers and new customers. We'd get the same response. I'm going to HSPA, fast network, I don't need optimization, I don't need you guys. Okay. So it was extremely frustrating. That started getting better only around 2010, when video became prolific and operators were running for the doors. And the basic problem was that they had build capacity and traffic started growing at exponential rates. So soon the traffic exceeded the build capacity in the network. And revenue did not grow at the same rate. And I believe the plots here somehow don't show. So used capacity goes like this. Build capacity goes like this. That's what the network can carry. This is what the traffic looks like today. You cross that point and you start losing money big time. And Lionel can attest to that. Okay. By putting the Bytemobile platform in the network, operators managed to achieve two things. One was from the network architecture point of view, take the build capacity and make it look 40%, up to 40% fatter. Okay? All of a sudden, because we made the pipes be more efficient. At the same time, so they essentially push the problem to the right. And that translates to real money, right? You defray CapEx, and that means a lot to operators. You improve user experience at the same time, because now you don't struggle with congested networks. And to make the long story short, today optimization, we started optimization in 2000. It was a hard sell. We believed in the value simply by looking at the rationale and the value, by translating essentially the cost of carrying 1 megabyte over any of the networks, 2G, 3G, 4G, and the cost of putting the product in the network and the net result. So today, I'm happy to say that we don't have to convince anybody. Operators are coming to us. So how did we do that? It doesn't really matter, but let me give you a very quick overview. If you look at the network, what we call 3G, 2G, whatever generation network, it all looks like this. We have base stations, and these tend to be of the order of tens of thousands. If you take AT&T has in excess of 80,000 major base stations, not counting picocells. And the network looks like a giant tree. So 80,000 base stations. They aggregate regionally to what we call the radio network controller. That's where all the smarts are done, scheduling, traffic. And then we have further aggregation up at the level of the serving GPRS node and the gateway node, etc. And all of this is esoteric. That's where the traditional big vendors, Ericsson, Alcatel-Lucent, Nokia, Siemens, etc., make their money. This is all closed, used to be closed. We were IP, software folks, right? So our platform tied at the very top of the tree. So think about, all of you have gone through computer science, right? So you know what I'm talking about. We see all the traffic, all the data traffic at this point. And that's where we applied the magic, which was clientless initially, and it was fully transparent to those using it and to the content providers. So that was essential, and that was a requirement from the get-go, that we would drop the box in the network, in line and will make the network perform a lot better and improve user experience as well. So operators could measure the value in the network, their customers could tell the difference as well at the same time. Almost too good to be true. Now, the good news is that being IP, an IP product, an IP platform, we didn't really have to worry about the radio access network. We didn't care really what was the actual radio protocol. It all looked the same to us. We were aware, but our solutions were independent of the technology, which was a great asset for us. So that's how we did it. And this is a high-level view of what we really ended up doing. So this shows a typical request response between a device and a server. Okay? You make a URL request, you get a response from cnn.com. If that server is congested, too many requests on the server, you may feel the latency. If you have a high bandwidth pipe that connects you, you're going to not really sense it. Now, if you put a network, a GPRS or an HSPA network, etc., if you're an AT&T customer, you know what I'm talking about. It's very frustrating when you try to download a web page or a document or a video, stream a video. And back in 2002, 2001, 2002, part of the problem that we did not quite predict, we expected it, but we did not really predict with respect to the timing, was that content was becoming a lot more complicated. Websites went from an average of 60 to 70 kilobytes per website to over 400 kilobytes in a matter of a year and a half. From 12 to 20 objects, embedded objects in an HTML document, to over 60 and 80 objects. So it took forever to download those pages. So what we did was, by coming up with an architecture that allowed us to be in the middle of the network, we could intercept the request and get the response into our platform, figure out what the user was doing without compromising, of course, security or privacy. By doing so, we could massage the content, replace the content. There are literally several dozens of optimizations that we implemented. The net result was that we were sending fewer packets, faster, smarter, and we could choose between users that were doing real-time web browsing, like streaming video, and users that were doing web browsing, for example, and give priority to those that needed it at the right time. Now, a side effect of that was that we knew what the user was doing. And we could break down whatever the user was doing to its constituent objects. So in this case, we knew that we had embedded JPEGs and videos and flash video and GIFs, etc. And we could apply different optimizations for different types of objects. Okay, the net result was improving the network efficiency by essentially reducing the amount of data required to do the same thing by a factor of 20 to 40% depending on the protocol, depending on the content. That was good news for operators. By having the ability to keep track of what the user was doing, we gave the operator a very powerful anchor point to establish an architecture for analytics and big data. As you know today, that's big business. So that was the initial idea, and then we started addressing optimization across different protocols, different applications, and video optimization was the big payoff. So, how much payoff? Well, if you look at the fact that in today's wireless networks, a typical mix of traffic in a typical operator would be about anywhere between 40 to 65% of the total traffic being video, and that is growing ahead of what the Cisco index predicts. We bring an improvement, a reduction, let's call it, in a simplified way here, a reduction of the total number of bytes to stream the same video by a factor of 40%. And that's huge. Translating it, and again, in very simple, oversimplified terms, think of making the network 40% or capable to carry 40% more data without expanding the infrastructure. One of our strategies early on was to look at optimization not as a stopgap solution. If you really think about what we're doing as business in IT, we're all about optimization. Okay? Everything we do somehow is a component of faster, better, more efficient, more productive, right? And we took a very holistic view of optimization, both from the vantage point of the user as well as the vantage point of the network operator. Typical network operators would spend, medium-sized to large MNOs would spend billions every year to keep the network growing and operating the network. So by providing a solution that saved them hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm talking about customer analysis that showed that our product had an ROI of 3 weeks. The cost of our product had an ROI of 3 weeks. And we would save, in one case of a large operator, we saved them close to $500 million over a period of 3 years, based on their own analysis. Okay, so, but it did take us years to get to that point. The other thing that we realized early on was that by focusing optimization on the content as opposed to the networking layer, we had the ability to do a lot more good. Because here you deal with gigabytes, here you deal with packets, either frames or packets that are 1,500 bytes. Okay, there's so much you can do with 1,500 bytes. But you can do wonders when you have the whole object. So, another slide here that shows the relative value of optimization. And this is a slide that I used ad nauseum, selling to operators, something that operators can relate to. It may not mean a whole lot to this audience, but let me try to explain it. You know that operators they bought spectrum, they spent billions of dollars, and they built the backhaul network and the packet core network, and we're talking about billions of dollars of investment here, or hundreds of millions for a small operator. This is how they build their networks. They understand that. They understand buying spectrum. They understand building a new radio access network. They sign up contracts, huge contracts with the big providers, big vendors that is. And of course, they either lease backhaul or they lay their own fiber or E1, T1 lines. Even today, we have about 35% of the total backhaul being E1 and T1 lines, connecting LT base stations that can beam data at the rate of 160 megabits per second. Okay, so you can see the discrepancy. And here we come as Bytemobile. We say, you know what? Let's look at, you spend billions of dollars to buy your spectrum. Fine. You spend hundreds of millions to build a new radio access network. Great. But your backhaul or your radio access addresses only the bottlenecks in that part of the network. Okay? You spend more money to buy more SGSNs and GGSNs and more efficient, more scalable platforms, but you address the problem only in the packet core. Optimization addresses the problem, brings efficiencies across the entire network, from spectrum utilization to utilization of the radio access network, to the packet core, etc. So the value optimization can translate in very crisp ROI. So that was again, the premise. And I think enough about technical stuff. we built a bunch of products. You all know that it's a lot easier to sell different solutions to the same customer than to sell the same solution to different customers, right? So we leverage that. And we build products that our customers would buy and deploy in the existing Bytemobile platforms, addressing real problems in the network. And we gave priority to that before we started expanding geographically. We focused in Europe, North America, and we started carefully expanding in areas of Asia. And that was a good strategy in hindsight. This is the Bytemobile box. It's a drop-in box, does the magic, and addresses pretty much what I think most operators would agree are the key pain points today in the network. The ability to know what traffic goes to the network, manage the traffic, monetize the traffic, and above all, optimize the network. Have solutions that would allow you, even when you have surges of data traffic, to make the network continue operating. I will not bore you with more details. Let me go quickly to chapter 2 because we're running out of time. Joining the Citrix family. Some people think that luck never plays a role. I believe luck does play a role. And it all started with unsolicited proposals. One unsolicited proposal that was quite attractive. And I compare it to dating, okay? You don't quite know when you're young or whatever stage in your life, whether it's the time to get married or, should I have a partner? Am I better off, enjoying my freedom, etc. Until something happens, right? So we were thinking about, we got to a stage where we had serious internal discussions, IPO, M&A, pros and cons. These days, nobody's eager to jump on the IPO wagon. It's a very painful process, and it defocuses the company because you have to start thinking about things that don't really matter, meeting the quarterly numbers, etc., as opposed to really building the best product in the industry, making the customers happy, etc. You know the story. On the other hand, M&A solutions tend to leave money on the table, and you don't know quite, how much. So what is the trade-off? We did have those soul-searching discussions, etc. And then we had an unsolicited proposal, which got the attention of our investors. So we knew we had to do something. And that something, of course, was the period of blind dates. When somebody proposed to you, you have to figure out, well, is anybody else interested in me? Right? That's when you hire a banker. And we hired Goldman Sachs. And we had already an engagement with Citrix, and we could see, from our perspective, we could see the synergy, which was very, very compelling. We had no idea whether Citrix would have the same opinion. Well, it turned out that Citrix did have, actually they were following us for some time. So, a couple of lessons I learned. First of all, as part of this dating, when the time comes to really commit, you realize that your past does matter. Every mistake you made in the past is going to come back and haunt you and make the whole process very difficult. And what I mean by that is, some of the contracts with our customers that were extremely complicated. When you close a deal with a carrier, the contract can be 1,000 pages or several hundred pages long, right? And the due diligence that we went through, the 2 rounds of financing, seemed in comparison like a piece of cake, literally. I mean, I would do it any day, n times, as long as I don't have to go through a due diligence for an M&A of the sort that Citrix puts us through. It was daunting, and it was draining. Well, the day after we closed the deal, for good, I realized something that I had heard about. Success has many fathers and mothers. Failure, of course, right? So all of a sudden, people that didn't quite, they had varying, degrees of participation, what you can call success, all of a sudden became the protagonists, self-proclaimed protagonists. So that was somewhat bittersweet for me to see. Let me share a couple of personal perspectives, and there are many. Some of them, cannot be shared in a forum like this. Some of them can. Let me start with a lesson that Kevin Harvey and Mike Farnwell helped me understand, and I practice ever since. Over the years, while working at Bytemobile, I also served as a sounding board for 2,000 pitches, Trident, Benchmark, etc. They called me in to help them evaluate the technical solution or whatever. And I was, I never really paid attention to the business model. Essentially, business model, of course, is important, but I'm talking about the revenue projections, right? And when we started, we were very frank about this. And I told Kevin, they asked us, what do you think you'll do? And I said, I have no clue. I have no clue whether we're going to be successful. But we're not looking for a job. I was a tenured professor. My